The more you rise, the more influence you have on the resources of the company, on how those resources are used. You have influence on the budgets, and you just are able to open up more opportunities for others.
South Africa is not a poor country. Africa is not a poor continent, just poorly managed. You see, if we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. It is up to us to determine our own new world.
Because with me as well, I believe that charity begins at home. You know, you have to start at home, you know, to lift the people that are around you and then move out.
When you are blessed like you and I are, to occupy spaces that your people ordinarily do not occupy, there are really only two choices that you can do. On the one hand, you can continue to be palleted, highlighted, and celebrated as the first one and only, and it makes you feel good. Or on the other hand, you can kick down those doors and bring in people that look like you.
Hello, seekers of prosperity with purpose. You are here because you refuse to separate purpose and money. Because you know that money without purpose is empty. And you also know that purpose without money lacks impact. Welcome to our session. Today we are going to talk about lifting as you rise in the corporate environment. When I was writing my book, Unleash Prosperity in Africa, I realized certain things. One, that poverty is not just lack of money, it is multidimensional. I realized also that for Africa to shift from poverty to prosperity, all the pillars of society have to work and do so with integrity. Our families have to be effective. Our churches, government, our health education, our health and education, our justice system, our media, our arts and culture, all pillars of society have to be effective and with integrity. I also realized that transformation is a process, and that is purpose-driven. Transformation cannot just happen on its own. It has to be purpose-driven. The fourth thing that I realized, out of many other things, is that each one of us can make a difference. Each one of us can make a difference in the transformation of our beloved continent. And because with that realization, I created this platform, UPPA Conversation. And our aim is to address transformation from poverty to prosperity in every pillar of society. And today, the pillar that we are focusing on is corporate, the pillar of business, but in particular, the pillar of corporate. We have as our guest today, Professor Bonang Mohale, who has risen through many corporate ladders, reaching the highest echelons. He is going to talk to us about the how. But I want to start by talking about the why, because it matters for us to speak about why before we speak about how. We need to understand why it matters. So we are talking about rising in the corporate environment and why it matters. There are 4 reasons that I want to give today of why you must rise in corporate. Number 1, rise for your own benefit. The higher you go in corporate, the higher you rise in corporate, the more benefits you get. 1, your income grows, so that you can buy the house, the car you want. You can take your children to the schools that you want. You can have a quality medical aid and pension funds, and you need that financial stability, to have the sense of dignity that you want to have. In corporate, you grow in terms of skills. The higher you grow, the more the corporate is willing to invest in your development through skills, leadership development, the MBAs, and that helps you to become even more marketable. The higher you go in corporates, the more your network grows. And you know what they say about your network, it becomes your net worth. You get a lot of colleagues, mentors, sponsors, leaders who lift you up. And as they move from one organization to another, they take your name into new places. So your network multiplies and your opportunities multiply. The last reason that I want to give on rise for your own benefit, it's to rise because you can influence more. The more you rise, the more influence you have on the resources of the company, on how those resources are used. You have influence on the budgets, and you just are able to open up more opportunities for others. So rise for your own benefit. The next reason is to rise for purpose. What are you on earth for? What difference do you want to make in the world? Those are questions about purpose. We often think that purpose belongs in ministries, in NGOs, in social entrepreneurship, but purpose belongs everywhere. So you can live in your purpose zone within corporate. Professor Bonang Mohale is an example of that. He's living in the purpose zone. And living in the purpose zone, it is about alignment between your earning and the difference you want to make in the world. It is where income, your capabilities, your passions converge with how you make a difference in the world. So rise to live in the purpose zone. The purpose zone is a zone of clarity, and clarity is power. The purpose zone is a zone where your greatest potential can be unlocked, because when you develop your gifting, you become better and better. It is an area of zeal, doing what you love and loving what you do. It is an area of resilience. You become more resilient when you are living in the purpose zone. Challenges do not break you. Instead, they strengthen you. So rise to live your purpose. Why does that matter? Does it matter to live your purpose in the corporate environment? Yes. The Gallup study has shown that in corporate, only about 23% of employees are fully engaged. About 60% are there. They are present, but emotionally disconnected from what they do. So you can imagine the waste of human potential, just the waste of people doing the bare minimum, just meeting the KPIs and getting the salaries, but with no passion and no commitment. So those who live their purposes in corporate, they stand out because they are making a difference. They stand out and they are promoted because they they have an influence on the bottom line, on the productivity as well as the profitability of organizations. Lastly, no, not lastly, the third reason, rise for Africanergy. Africanergy is a concept that I have created to speak about the maternal energy that is required to transform poverty into prosperity in Africa. We see Africanergy in the many women who are trying to get a better future for their children. We see it in the woman who wakes up at 4 a.m. to bake amagwinya. We see it in the woman who is selling vegetables at the taxi rank. We see it in the woman who is selling cosmetics at a company, not because it's glamorous, but because they want a better future for their children. Africa has the highest entrepreneurial activity for women. Africa has Africanergy. So rise for Africanergy, because right now in South Africa, we have such high unemployment. We have so many young people who are unemployed. Almost more than half of young people in South Africa are unemployed. We have 10 million people living on 900 rands per month. That's the extent of poverty in South Africa. So we need to understand the context that we are in. So as we rise with an understanding of that context. That is Africanergy. The problems that we are facing as a country and as a continent did not happen overnight. Centuries of slavery, colonization, and apartheid have had not only an economic impact on us, but they have affected us in other ways. Research, for example, tells us that a mind that is so focused on survival is unable, or rather finds it difficult, to see opportunities and seize them. It finds it difficult to innovate and to think long term. That's what research tells us. So as we rise, we need to be aware of the context that we are in and be aware that it will take sacrifice. And by the way, that is why it needs a maternal energy. And by the way, maternal energy is not only in females, it is there for everyone who is willing to do the work they need to. to create a better future for others. So, what does Afritanergy look like in a corporate environment? Afritanergy shows up when leaders lift as they rise, unlocking the vast potential that Africans have. We see it when work cultures are created that are grounded on Ubuntu, celebrating diversity, acknowledging the past while intentionally shaping the future. We see Afritanergy in the workspace, in work cultures that are entrepreneurial, that encourage entrepreneurship so that people can grow as entrepreneurs, so that a culture of entrepreneurship is created not only in the company, but going outside as well. Afritanergy shows up as well when we use the profits of the company in a conscious way, where BBBEE is not just a tick compliance exercise. It becomes an intention to create sustainable development in our country. It shows up even when companies engage in CSI and in enterprise development, they understand the context. So they don't just provide business skills and funding, but help beneficiaries to heal from the wounds of the past as we shape a prosperous future for our continent. Addresses mindsets. It addresses the ability to create innovations and to really encourage enterprising behavior. So rising with Afritanergy means you do not rise alone. You rise while lifting others. You rise whilst helping your institution to grow. You rise while empowering communities. And you rise while advancing generational economic development in the country and in the continent. That is how Africa will prosper. The last reason is to rise for God. Rise for God. When your life purpose aligns with God's will, it becomes your calling. Remember, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. So rise to fulfill your divine mandate. Rise to bring heaven's values down onto earthly systems. Rise so that you brighten your corner. Rise so that when your work is done, you will hear a voice that says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few. Come, sit at the master's table." So those are the 4 reasons to rise. Rise for your own benefit, rise to live your purpose, rise with affraternity, for affraternity, and rise for God. Those are the 4 reasons for you to rise. The future of Africa will not be built only by policies and governments or plans. It will be built by people who are willing to do the work on themselves, becoming their best selves, and being willing to serve something that is greater than themselves. People who are willing to do the work required to rise, people who lift as they rise, and people who carry a fraternity into their spaces with a divine mandate. Are you one of them? If you like this video, if you like what you are hearing, please hit like and please subscribe for more of such information where we find out where we explore how to unleash prosperity in Africa.
This economy must look like us. It must be broadly reflective of the demographics. When it's broadly reflective of the demographics, we can retire transformation, because Black people are not helpless, hopeless, useless people who need a perpetual crutch against which they want to lean for the rest of their lives. All they want is not a hand down, but a hand up.
You know what I'm taking from what you are saying is the importance of responsibility. That sense of responsibility shaped your decision making. Knowing that you are responsible for your family, you are responsible for others. It shaped your destiny. It shaped your entrepreneurial thinking. That is number one. What I also am taking from it is that when you always were looking on how to grow whatever the business is, so even when you were stable financially, you never rested on your laurels, because you kept on investing, simply because, even now as you are saying, that sense of responsibility for others, that sense of responsibility for your nieces and your relatives, and that sense of responsibility will add for the African child. That's what I'm taking.
Let me add on just what Sis Nomvuyo said. You know, the economy of Zimbabwe is held intact by the 12 million Zimbabweans, 5 million who are outside of Zimbabwe, shared between Botswana and South Africa. They work in these two countries, they earn money, they send it back to Zimbabwe. And their siblings, their nieces and nephews are able to go to university, and they are able to become chartered accountants, like Mtandazo Peter Moyo. At some stage of the 5 major mining companies in South Africa, 4 of them had Zimbabweans as managing directors. Only 1 had a Zambian as a managing director. This is Mbazima, who was looking after the Anglo-American mines from ZCCM, Nkopola, right down to South Africa. But Let me also add this Nomvuyo by saying, yes, um, you know, yes, we need to save, we need to have a sense of responsibility. But structurally, systemically, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, why is it that 32 years into democracy in April, why is it that all the petrol attendants and all the waitrons and all the cashiers are still black? That 32 years into democracy, why is it that poverty still has a black, a feminine, and a rural face? Why is it that some of us who now are mainstays of our families, we didn't choose to be the mainstay of our family, to say they will depend on us. Nobody wants that responsibility on their shoulders. But it's an understanding that that's what it means to be an African. When we say it takes a whole village to bring up an African child, it's not just a saying, it's because that's how we used to live. If you were the oldest daughter, you were the deputy mom. If you were the oldest son, you were the deputy dad. And God forbid, if you lost your father, like I did at the age of 17, I was left with no option but to say, oh, now it's up to me. I need to make sure that the three that come behind me also have an opportunity to go to school until they say, I've done enough, so that they can never complain that I don't have shoes, I didn't have the fees paid. Here's the last one. But what I love in hindsight, of course, it's a lot of responsibility. Some people even call it black tax. I would never call it black tax because our parents didn't have policies. They didn't save. When I went to Wits for the first time, 1981, those 18-year-olds went there with beetles that they bought themselves because their parents had taken policies probably 20 years earlier and now they'd matured. With us, we didn't even have the transport money to take us to Wits. So I think systemically and systematically, 32 years into democracy, we haven't even begun to dismantle the apartheid spatial planning. Why do I mention it? Because it's important. Apartheid was intentional, deliberate, and purposeful in making sure that black peoples live the closest 40 kilometers from their places of work. That act in and of itself made sure that it took them 40 minutes one way and 40 minutes coming back, which then gobbled up on average 40% of their monthly wages. If you add food, that's 70% of their monthly wages. So they're left with 30% to clothe us and to buy shoes for us and take us to school. Therefore, when financial advisors tell us today that there's this notion called compound interest, and it works by you saving early, whatever the amount, and saving for long, it is impossible for black people to save. And it's one thing that when we became free, we haven't even begun to address. What breaks my heart is that we had an opportunity to create new townships our own, not ver genoeg, which means it's beyond 4 kilometers. Now they're getting closer. Now the question, is it ver genoeg? So we had Cosmo City to build. Guess what? Cosmo City is 40 kilometers away from downtown Joburg, to show that we're not thinking deeply and profoundly about just two things: improving the quality of lives of the majority of our people, so that there's a better life for all, not just elected officials. So black people are poor not because they are lazy. They are poor because the entire system is designed to oppress them, to exclude them, to subjugate them. And by the way, this is also true for the continent of Africa. This is also true for South Africa, because in 1910, when Great Britain had an option to give this South Africa either to the black elites that were more educated and better farmers, or to the white male Afrikaners, they went to a corner and said, but what do we actually want from South Africa? Just three things. They said, one, we want a crucible of cheap labor forever. Guess what? 32 years into democracy, we are still cheap labor. But forever, it will be determined by you and I. Number two, they said they can go to the belly of the earth and dig for the gold. The deepest mine in the world is Western Deep Level. It's now called Mpone, 5 kilometers. There is no mine that goes that deep anywhere else in the world. And we will have the first right of refusal as Great Britain. Here's the one that should break our heart. They said, of course, they scratch on the surface or even on the riverbeds, find a diamond or two. We will determine the price of those diamonds. Hence the creation of the London Sales Organization. The analogy is like you plant your own tomatoes. You water them, you talk to them, you harvest them, you take them and stand by the road. A taxi driver comes and looks at me, so no, these are big and red. I will determine the price. That's exactly what the London Sales Organization is doing. It's our diamonds, it's our country. They tell us at what price. When that happens, there's no way that Africa would ever be rich. The same way that we dig the minerals because we don't beneficiate them. We don't know the value, the utility. We send them somewhere else. It comes back to us. They charge us 10 times the price. Even coal, I mean, we've got 400 years of coal underneath Mpumalanga. We missed not one, but 3 commodity booms. The first one was the gold boom. The second was the coal boom. Now, there's the 5,000 per ton gold price. So before I come to what can we do personally to do something about it, let me go back to Africa and South Africa and make a statement that South Africa is not a poor country, Africa is not a poor continent, just poorly managed. You see, if we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. It is up to us to determine our own new world. We were warned that if we don't look after our freedom well, the colonizer, the oppressor, and the racist will come back as the investor. They'll give themselves sexy names like the market and will be at the mercy of the market. So to unlock this potential, we need to, like Alcoholics Anonymous, accept that we are a problem. You know, even during years of slavery, the slave master came in big ships. They docked by the port. They didn't go to the hinterland. It also our chiefs and our kings who collected most of us in the hinterland and then put us in kraals like cows and then would give us to the slave master for a bag full of money. So the oppressor would not be so strong without the complicity of some of the oppressed. We need to take culpability of the role played by us today, but also by our forebears, instead of just blaming apartheid that we brought this to ourselves. We are the only country in Africa that became free from colonialism, and we didn't do these 3 things. Number 1, exponentially increase the educational level of our own people. Since when is 30% an acceptable pass mark? Number 2, we are the only country to be free from colonialism, and we did not increase the ownership of the economy by at least double digit by the indigenous people. Even Gabriel Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, poor as it is, 12 million of them, as they are, the ownership of that economy is owned at least double digit by the Zimbabwean people. The last one is that even 32 years into democracy, we are the only country that became free from colonialism. And then just after 30 years, out of our own free volition, we willingly gave over power to the oppressor. Willingly. You know, history is replete with examples. Nowhere in the world does white people voluntarily give up privilege. No, you said I must be deep. The duration of oppression is never determined by the oppressor. It's always determined by the oppressed. It's only when the oppressed say this much and no longer, then we are going to be free. As a country, if we don't think, here's a good example. We built what is called the Ben Schoeman Highway to connect Johannesburg and Pretoria. At that time, we had a 12 million car park. 3 million were traversing between Joburg and Pretoria. We knew that to build the road, it will take us 3 years. Guess what we did? We built the road for 3 million cars, knowing that it will take us 3 years to complete. By the time we finished in 3 years, of course, we had more than 3 million cars. That explains the congestion from day one when you opened the Ben Schoeman. No, it gets worse. An amazing, proud South African called Van der Bijl. He built not one, but 3 institutions. He built Eskom. He built the IDC. He built Eskom. But let me tell you about Eskom. He builds Eskom. Nameplate 56 gigawatt electricity. But he built it for only 10% of the population there, which is just for white people. That's why in rural areas there's no electricity. That's why in the townships there's no electricity. So we become free on the 27th of April 1984. We inaugurate a new president on the 10th of May. We say we are going to build 4 million new houses. We say we are going to electrify at a rate of 10,000 homes a month when Dr. Ruel Khoza is the chairman of Eskom, which had a higher ratings by the 3 rating agencies than Sovereign. But that 56 gigawatt of electricity had now become 42 gigawatt of electricity. Now you add more people. Of course, it stands to reason that you have to increase the capacity. And we didn't. Right at the last minute, when we realized, we don't have enough electricity, we say, okay, let's build new electric stations. Even then, we don't build modular, build and use, like you do Lego. We say, in order to steal, because the intent was looting, let's build the biggest, the tallest, the highest. Because when you build Medupi and Kuseni, and I include Ingula, which is hydroelectric power, collectively, they're going to cost 160 billion. So if you steal 500 million, it's like small change. It's a rounding error. They won't see. That's why we did it. But Medupi was supposed to give us 9.6 gigawatt. Kusile was supposed to give us 9.6 gigawatt. That gap was just 6 gigawatt. Because at peak, we need 32 gigawatts. At the best performance, we don't even provide 27. So for 17 years, we have load shedding. What were we trying to solve? 6 gigawatt. We should have finished Medupi and Kusile and Ingula by 2016. We didn't. But we had already spent 300 billion instead of the initial 150 billion. And we didn't have 50% of the capacity. We didn't have 70% of electricity availability factor because the intent was looting. So what can we do personally? You said I must be deep. I think this is an elective year, local government elections. But 2 years from now, it will be national elections. It's called the political economy because it doesn't matter what we do. Politics have a disproportionate impact on what we do. So I think we need to choose our leaders wisely. Leave the thieves behind because they've shown that they don't love us. Because you have to love your people to lead them. So number one, we should choose the type of leaders that would help us root out and defeat state capture. Because state capture in 5 years, we stole 1.5 trillion rands. That's 2/3 of what Edward Kieswetter collects from you and I and from companies in 1 year. That's what we stole in 5 years. In the 9 wasted years, we siphoned off on average 200 billion just to the 2 Zupta families. Let me digress. In COVID, AfriForum and Solidarity built a technicon in Pretoria for 300 million. There's a university, it will still be standing for 300 years. The same week in Gauteng alone, we spent 450 million in Gauteng to fumigate the schools that were closed in COVID. And we have nothing to show for it. So root out and defeat state capture. Number two, we need to complete the unfinished work of transformation. Because if these Africans have nothing to lose, they will ban the only library that serves the two times. So this economy must look like us. It must be broadly reflective of the demographics. When it's broadly reflective of the demographics, we can retire transformation, because Black people are not helpless, hopeless, useless people who need a perpetual crutch against which they want to lean for the rest of their lives. All they want is not a hand down, but a hand up. They want to be provided with the boots and the straps with which they can pull themselves up. That's what we are failing to do as a people. The third, we need ethical leadership, because ethics is both prescribed and proscribed. My grandmother says ethics, it's what you do, not what you say when nobody's watching. The fourth, we need good governance. Yes, cooperative governance is the separation of ownership from control. But good governance does not steal from the mouths of the babies, the sick, and the dying, like we saw during COVID-19. The penultimate one is we need service delivery, because that's the job description of somebody who chooses to be a public servant. You see, if you choose by vocation or calling to be a public servant, it means from get-go, you forgo the Bentley. For you, a Toyota Tez is good enough, because the definition is in the name. When you say public protector, it's very clear, who is she protecting? Of course, the public. So if I'm a public servant, it says the best amongst us lead with the heart of a servant. Servant leadership is not a leader with many servants. The last one, we need law and order, safety and security. In the Western Cape, 8 municipalities, gangs employ more people than government. South Africans are not free walking in the streets because they are exposed. I can almost understand. But South Africans are not safe in their own homes, which is supposed to be their fortress, their sanctuary, because it's the contact crimes that are increasing. When we release monthly statistics, we're supposed to use them for planning. It's like census. We plan census so that we know how many South Africans are. 65 million. We know that 1.2 million of them start school. But you know, when they get to university, we don't have enough universities. When they qualify, we don't have enough places for them. We know how many children are born a day, every day, but we don't plan for them, because we read these statistics, we verbalize them in parliament, and then we get into our BMW X5s, a motorcade of 10 cars, without being intentional, deliberate, and purposeful and planning. In 2022, there was 1.2 million students in the 26 public universities. I exclude the TVET colleges. They needed 50 billion to educate them on a fee-free basis. If we looked at only those that qualify, a combined household income of 350,000 per annum, we need 20 billion. But there was a small problem, of course, historical debt of 16.5 billion, 9.2 billion of which is irrecoverable. The same year, 100,000 young people finished their studies but couldn't graduate because they owed money, therefore swelling the ranks of the unemployed. But yet we've got 400 companies listed on the JSE. We've got 1.5 million that are called small and medium enterprises with a turnover of 300 million or less. We've got 80 that hold securities in the 60 private equity firms. If each one of them, you know, the CEO of a mining company, earned in 1 year 300 million. If we put into a historical debt fund a measly 1 million rand, in 1 year, not in 32 years of democracy, would have wiped off the entire 16.5 billion. And we give these young leaders a chance to reclaim their self-worth, their self-respect, to deal with issues of mental health and period poverty. That's what we can do individually. So instead of my hiring a garden service, what if I employed one person and I paid them 5,000 a month? They can educate their children and clothe them, and those have the same opportunity to become doctors. When I buy my house, do I even ask, who are the convincing attorneys? Who are the notarial attorneys? Do I even know who's going to register the bond? It's your money, it's your house. Imagine if you were specific to say, I want Me Makotoko to be the conveyancer because it is my house, would change the prognosis of black people. When I go to buy a car in the showroom, if I looked around and say, I'll go to Memadin King right at the corner and say, I want you to get my 10% commission. I want to buy my X5 from you. That's what it means for us as a people. So we are poor by choice. So to be practical, on Monday, an announcement came from SBV. You can write it down in Google if you didn't see it. That announcement says Mark Barrett, the CEO of SBV, is retiring in 2028. Effective 1st of June this year, he's handing over to Tata Hamilton Melani, who is now the deputy CEO, so that when he retires, he takes over from Mark Barrett. That's what I'm doing as chairman of SBV. It's not an accident. At the Bidvest Group Limited, where I'm currently chairman, the listed entity is one of the top 40 on the JSE. We employ 137,000 people. Last year, we posted 127 billion South African rands, 12 billion trading profit. We've got 7 divisions. All of these 7 divisions, I'll come back, and we've got 350 companies. 250 of them are operating entities. There's Bidvest Bank, there's Adcock Ingram, there is Prestige, there's Steiner, but there's an automotive division called Bidvest McCarthy. All 7 of these divisions, 4 of them are now led by women. The group CEO of the Bidvest Group Limited is an African woman. Her name is Sis Nompumelelo Tembekile Madisa. She's just turned 45. And she has done the most amazing things. First, to breach the 100 billion turnover mark. 2016, we broke this company to 2. She inherited only Bidvest South Africa. We are now in 7 countries. 38-year-old, proudly South African company founded by Brian Joffe, a Jewish guy. For the first time in the history of this country, we are now in North America. We bought UK's #1 hygiene business called PHS. We paid 437 million pounds. We are now the #1 hygiene company in the world. We just took over from Rentokil. And they include their services business just in hygiene. We now #1. We are now in, yes, US of A, we're in Ireland, we're in Northern Ireland, we are in Spain, we are in Singapore, we are in Australia. And she does this within 2 years. She has the record of posting the highest dividend in the history of this country. And she does that, listen to this, with a board that is 80% black and 73% African women. At the Business Leadership South Africa, BLSA, where the 100 top CEOs of the listed entities on the JSE, when I took an early retirement at age 55, said, if I'm too young to retire, come and be our boss. I became the CEO of BLSA. And I said, okay, I'll do it because I understand why BLSA was formed. But I left an amazing warrior of a woman in BLSA as the CEO of BLSA. Her name is Busisiwe Mavosu. Let me end with an example at Shell Oil Products Africa, where I was the group CEO, I was the chairman, but also I was the executive vice president of our upstream business. There I left 5 of the entire exco as people who look like me. Ubabuhloni Pizwe Justice Mtolo as the chairman of Shell Oil Products Africa. Matt Tabile Muluku as head of legal. Prithni Naidu as the head of human capital. And Me Babrama Kubedu from Bushbuckridge as our CFO. Because as I end Sis Nomvuyo, when you are blessed like you and I are to occupy spaces that your people ordinarily do not occupy, there are really only two choices that you can do. On the one hand, you can continue to be palleted, highlighted, and celebrated as the first one and only, and it makes you feel good. Or on the other hand, you can kick down those doors and bring in people that look like you.
Awesome. Let us invite our guests to questions. One of the reasons why we do this thing the way we do that, so that our guests, the purpose seekers, the prosperity seekers, can engage and ask their own questions. So I hope you've got lots and lots of questions. Over to you, Pinky.
Hi. Oh, what an amazing session. I'm so much lifted. Thank you so much, Prof, for sharing, for being in this platform today. What I could pick up, from the conversation, one thing is, which I'm so excited about, you have confirmed that behind every successful man, there is a woman or a family behind him. Most people don't acknowledge that. They become successful and forget where they're coming from. And what you highlighted as well is, starting early, with your investment. You start small and move up. There's only a few of us who actually understand money. So at an early age, you actually understood what money is all about. Also, uplifting your family, because with me as well, I believe that charity begins at home. You have to start at home, to lift the people that are around you and then move out, to outside, in the area outside the economy. I like that, but I think, with most Black people, what we believe in is the sense of entitlement, to say, if I employ a member of my family, will they work? Will they listen? Will they do, what they're supposed to do? Are they able to divorce, the family part and the business part? I think that's what most people, try for. They struggle with, to say, if I employ my sister, will my sister act according to what is required? In the old days, yes, you did stress, to say it takes a village to build an African child, but we've moved away from that. We are in these houses, we don't even know who our neighbors are. I wish we could go back to that, because we grew up in that era, of saying, the mother next door is your mother as well. Whoever is in your area is your parent, so which is why, we came out to be the people that we actually are. You have risen with integrity, which is quite lovely skill. You've done a lot, lifting other people, with you. You didn't say, yes, I'm who I am, and you forgot about the other people at the bottom. When it comes to politics, I like what you shared, to say, what can we do personally? The issue that I have with that as well is, with the leaders, choosing the right leaders. Yes, we all do that, and you think that a person is the right leader, but once they're chosen, they turn a blind eye and they become somebody that we never thought they would be. But who are those leaders? That is my question. Who are those leaders that are there, that we can rely on, that are ethical, that have good governance skill, and are able to actually lead us to the other side? I just want to check here if there are any questions. Okay, there's one question here. To say there's somebody who wants us to comment on this phrase. It takes 2 generations to oppress people, and equally to free them. Well, what is your comment on that? Okay, let me see if there's another one. Okay, mine was on the to say that entitlement. How do we get rid of that entitlement to say, you are family, I can do what I please. How do we maneuver over that? Okay, let me see what we have here. I just want you to answer everything at once. Okay, at the moment we have that. Can you answer that whilst I go through?
There are two hands up. There are 2 hands up.
Okay. Can Prof answer these first, and then we can take the hands and open up to the audience. Thanks.
Let me start with it takes 2 generations to oppress and equally to free the people. Generally, yes. But the effect that a leader has on any country, on any organization, the Harvard Business Review of 2010 of October says it's north of 40 percentage points. So with a good leader, you can do miracles. South Africa is a good example. We had people from Zimbabwe. We had people here from Zambia. We have people from Mozambique. Now we don't see people from Zambia. And all it took is one leader in Zambia who was elected president and worked on the economy, loves his people, and the people from Zambia went back to Cha-Cha-Cha Road in the capital. And they're working there, they're well looked after. And even the people from Botswana are not here anymore, because Botswana is a country, even though small as it is, no more than 2 million people. The 65 million South Africans have a better quality of life there than here. I can say the same about Eswatini and even Lesotho, even though this country was built with the sweat, blood, and tears of the people from the neighboring countries, especially South African Customs Union. But let me give you an example of just 3 countries that did it not in 2 generations, in 1 generation. There was a useless country, which was a swamp. Its parent even told it to go away, expelled by its own parent company. The country is called Singapore. Its parent company is Malaysia. It took one leader called Lee Kuan Yew, who said to his people, we only have each other, nobody else. You know, Lee Kuan Yew was their leader. In just 40 years, this 1 generation, they were able to lift themselves up to be one of the top 5 highest per capita income countries in the world. Today, their real estate is the 2nd highest in the world after Hong Kong. The World Bank and the IMF says they are going to be number 1 and the most expensive in 2050. But how did Lee Kuan Yew do it? He didn't come up with 50 priorities. He didn't come up with 10 economic plans like we have. RDP, GEAR, ASGISA, the 9-point plan. No. He did 3 things only. He said, number 1, it's about meritocracy. Number 2, it's about pragmatism. Number 3, it's about honesty. That's all. 3. And the one thing that he did was, if you are a public representative, you bring a new law to be enacted, also bring another law that we must take off so that our constitution is not too complex and our people are not going to understand it. But the one that I love about his example, he said to young people, we are an island. We don't even have fresh water. The fresh water comes from mainland Malaysia. He said, if you are a young person and you want to buy a house here because it's prime real estate, you must save. Whatever you have saved, when the time comes to buy a house, we will double it. What did our leaders do? They say to our people, you know what? You are so much in debt. Let's pass a law to allow you to eat your pension now whilst you are still alive. So that when you retire, you'll be poor and you can come and be the responsibility of the state for 2,000 rand a month pension or 350 social relief of distress grant. We are failing to love our people and failing to think. You must go and Google what Lee Kuan Yew did when the Singapore Airline Company, SAS, it was the #1 airline in the world for 10 consecutive years. The pilots decided to go on strike because they wanted more money. He didn't send the Minister of Transport or Aviation. He went himself. In that video, he's wearing a white shirt, but he had folded it up to here. He called the pilots into one room and he said, two things and two things only. One, I can fire all of you, the whole lot, close Singapore Airlines and start a new airline because you know I can. Second choice is you all take up your bags and you go back to work because we've got a country to build here. Guess what they did? They took their bags and went back and they flew that afternoon. I don't know a South African president who, when COSATU has gone on strike, will go to COSATU and say, do you remember what our forebears died for? Do you remember why the ANC was formed for in 1912? Do you remember the 27th of June, 1955 in Cape Town when we formed the freedom? Do you remember why our constitution is the best in the world? Because of the one pager called the preamble of our constitution that rests just on 3 pillars. Who's going to do that? The second example is South Korea. South Korea in 1960 got money from Ghana. That's how poor they were. 1960. By 2010, when we hosted the World Cup, South Korea had given us Hyundai, Samsung TVs, and they tapped on the ASEAN market, 600 million people. Today, they are leading in generative AI. They are leading even in pop music because they followed with the singularity of purpose, educating their people. They worked hard. School was 8 to 8 every day, even on Saturdays. The last one is Rwanda. Rwanda, because there's only 12 million of them, like Zimbabwe, by the way. Paul Kagame, love him or hate him. On the 27th of April, when we went to the polls, that night, they had massacred 800 Tutsis by the Hutus. At the end of the month, 1 million people were dead. 20 years later, one generation. You go to Rwanda today, they no longer talk about Tutsis and Hutus. They talk only about Rwandans. Their parliament has more women than any other in the country and more young people. But if you go to Kigali, the capital, you get free Wi-Fi on public buses. In South Africa, only 16.4% of households have internet to their homes. And only 14.6% of the people have medical aid.
Okay.
And all Rwanda did was to go to Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore and say, give us the formula. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, including the president leading the cleaning up campaigns on Saturday morning and Wednesdays. That's what Paul Kagame does. Yes, Singapore is a benevolent dictatorship because we like giving things name, and so is Rwanda. He's not asking for anybody's permission. He just loves his people, and the Rwandans love him back. Back to you, Mapping.
Yeah. Those who rise must rise for the nation, not just for themselves. Okay, I've got 3 people. I think what we'll do, we'll just take 3, the 3 of them, And then the Prof will just answer all 3 questions as well. Okay, let's start with you, Motlalepule. Over to you.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, and thank you, Prof, for everything that you've shared and for answering that first question. It was from me. I just have another question, which is my last question. Could you maybe just comment on the initiative by, I think it's the previous president of Botswana, President Masisi. He initiated that whole diamond thing with, I think it's the British or whoever the overseas owners in that transaction. And I know that there were changes in terms of Botswana owning what rightfully belongs to them. Where is that process at? Are the Botswana benefiting from that? That is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Motlalepule. Let's go to Julian.
Good.
Over to you, Julian. Thank you.
Morning, Prof. Good morning, everybody. It's really a tough and painful truth to listen to, given where we are and what we can do. And my question is, it's a statement and a question. The statement is, I'm a believer that despite what is going on, despite the complexity of it all, each one of us can do a little bit. And that little bit can impact. So how do we then, because when you look at this whole sea of pain and what is not working, and you're doing your little bit, how can you help us measure and encourage ourselves to actually carry on doing the little bit? Because the story of Rwanda, the story of Singapore, all these stories started with somebody doing something. But when you are in let's say a township or a street where you are doing where 100 is needed, but you're doing 1. How do you measure, how do you scale up that 1 so that it becomes a 10 and so forth? I at least want to die knowing that I didn't change South Africa in totality, but where my hands were put, I was able to make that difference. And then I have the authority and the integrity to go and tell that story so that more of those that can do the little bit can increase. Yes, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julian. And then the last one, can we go to, is it Rose?
Hi, everyone. Yes, it's Rose.
Rose, over to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for organizing this wonderful webinar. And most importantly, thank you, Prof. Bonang, for your availability and sharing of wisdom. I've got 2 quick questions. I'll try to summarize them. Actually, the first one is, obviously you speak so passionately about ethical leadership, and we are in a climate where state capture scars are still fresh and procurement leaks continue. Now, how do we move from merely naming and shaming to actually building institutional systems that can make unethical leadership impossible? And the second one, it's sort of like, on a personal level, because, you on Lift as you rise philosophy for us young professionals and particularly entrepreneurs that are entering or just entered this fragile economy. The pressure is simply survival, So how then can we practically apply the lift as you rise philosophy when already we feel like we are struggling to find our own footing due to the socioeconomical factors that we face? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Tate Mohale.
So let me start. Kamme on the day that you were born, it was probably raining if you are not named after your great-grandmother. Your question is, each one can have an impact. Absolutely correct. Mother Teresa says, if all of us can just clean our backyards, the world will be a cleaner place. Ngugi wa Thiong'o is an author and a poet. He says, he is a fool, he who treats his own brother worse than a stranger. He goes on to say, when brothers fight to the death, a stranger will inherit your father's estate. He says a brother that has made a mistake must be saved, not blamed. So in our own households, in our own families, are we at war with our own families? Because charity, like clarity, and as you build wealth, starts in the family. I swear to God, I think this conflict of interest was created for black people. Because most entrepreneurs, especially Jewish entrepreneurs, Afrikaner entrepreneurs, especially the ones from Stellenbosch, and Muslims, those are the three communities that have made the most amount of money in the 32 years that we've been free. And how have they done it? Let's take the Jewish people for an example, because they run family businesses. You can bet your bottom dollar that when a Jewish person, and it's true with Afrikaners and Muslims anyway, when they've got a piece of ground in Sandton, the highest real estate in the continent, that the architect will be Jewish, the builder will be Jewish, the electrician will be Jewish, and the plumber will be Jewish. And in their businesses, that's why they're successful, because they hire family and they hand over to second and third generation. You can't hand over to second and third generation if you don't bring them in. But if a black person hires in the Department of Public Works, because it's government, family, of course it's not right. But in your own businesses, listed or not, most businesses anywhere else in the world, you bring in people that you trust and love. There's nobody that you trust and love more than family. That's why we need to build our own businesses so that we can hand them over to. So when you ask people of Indian descent, how did you become so good in business? They say, when I was 6, I'd go to school. When I come back, they would put a crate, I stood on the crate and started helping people in our small shop. That's where they learned the rigor and the discipline. You know, there are lots of black people who come from families where nobody works. Therefore, when you hire them, they don't know this notion of starting on time at 8 and finishing at 5 every day. Because they wake up when they wake up. Because sons learn by looking at the back of the head of their fathers. Children don't do what you say, they do what you do. It's monkey see, monkey do. That's how you pass culture from father to son to grandson. Imagine what you can do at work when you are a supervisor. If you are a woman and you bring in other women, not be bitchy and want to be the only woman in the room. Imagine if you are a black person and you have a responsibility in a company like Business Leadership South Africa, which is not yours, like the Bidvest Group Limited. It's not ours, it belongs to shareholders. But we are temporary occupants of the corridors of power. And we hire other black people and we hire women. We don't make excuses because the intent is wholesome. Because we are truthful people. We are truth-loving. We are truth-saying. And we are truth-living with a little power that we have. So even if you are a supervisor, you can change the conditions of the people that work for you. Here's the last example to you, Julian, as I talk about each one can have impact. If you are black and you understand, have a full appreciation that there are a lot of people who come from Enkangala along the Moloto Road. They take a bus at 4 in the morning to start work in downtown Joburg at 8. So, of course, when people go to tea at 10 o'clock, they're already tired and they're feeling sleepy. And if you are their boss and you are black and African and they're 10 minutes late, before you embarrass them publicly and say, you see, that's why you black people are useless and poor. That's why you'll amount to nothing. Imagine if you pause for a moment and say, in private, not publicly, to say, I realize that today you came 10 minutes late. What could have happened? With just an open mind. And the answer, more often than not, will surprise you. Because if you're a black person and you're from Soweto, you know that even if somebody took a 6 o'clock taxi to come to downtown Joburg, sometimes they are the first in that taxi and the taxi doesn't move until the taxi is full. You know this. So when you set up your meetings in the morning, imagine if you said, we'll have our meetings starting at 9 because all of us are here at 7. Do whatever you have to do, but the meeting will start at 9, not at 8, because we've got a full appreciation of this dilemma. And if one of them were to walk in already embarrassed, tiptoeing because they're already ashamed and they pull a chair, instead of embarrassing them publicly, is just to nod and acknowledge them just by nod. And when they're finished, you go to their office, not summons them to your office and say, I realize that you were 10 minutes late this morning. What could have happened? And the answer, more than not, will surprise you rather than embarrassing them publicly. Mutalipulia's second question is about a company called De Beers that President Masisi started. Now they've got a youngster, Ntate Boko. He takes no prisoners. So De Beers for many years, it was owned by Anglo-American corporations, by the Oppenheimer family. The largest stake they've ever owned since this company was formed is 16%, but they've always controlled it. The Botswana people, it's their diamonds, it's their country, it's their land. They would take these mines and then sell them, and they would get 10% of the profits, not of the turnover. So President Masisi said, but this is not fair, renegotiated to about 20. When President Boko came in, he says, no, we're not negotiating with our diamonds and our land. We want 50%. And guess what was De Beers' response? Okay, we'll give you 50%, but we can't just give you 50% now. Let's start with 35%. That is leadership. That is progress. He didn't need a conference. He didn't need the State of the Nation address to do it. He did it in the first week after being elected. He went straight to De Beers and said, no, you've been robbing and pillaging and stealing from our land, and we have nothing to show for it. We have to renegotiate these terms. And he put a number on the table and said, we want 50. You've got the skills, the know-how, the capital, and the machinery, but it's still our diamonds, still our land. Melrose. Ethical leadership, for sure. But ethics not in and of itself. Africans are very eloquent. They can talk everybody under the table. But when it comes to the doing, we are bad executors. Even in South Africa, you see it. We've got many plans, but very little doing, very little follow-up. As an example, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, chaired by Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu. He even shed tears. He found 4,000 people that did not qualify for amnesty, which was granted, extended. All you had to do was to tell the whole truth. And it's our own presidents who are reluctant to prosecute. I don't know they were bought with what, but they're the ones that were reluctant. Now they are dying, and the PEPCO 4 are trying to find justice. The people that burned them at stake like briar fleece, the last one has just died last month. So who's going to be finally accountable? the Zondo Commission, formed. In fact, the 6th and the 7th administration has created more commissions of inquiry than all the 5 administrations put together. Whenever somebody wakes up and says, hey, this one is still a commission of inquiry. No, this one, commission of inquiry. Now we lead by committee. Imagine what type of leader leads by committee. And even the Madlanga Commission, amazing revelations. In the Zondo Commission, it took 4 years. It cost us R1 billion. In the first report, 487 pages long, it names 97 ANC people who have agitated and orchestrated for state capture. Up until today, not a single successful prosecution. The same way that in the TRC, up until today, not a single successful prosecution. Now, Mkhwanazi goes to parliament to tell them the people who are rotten are the chief of the police. And he says some of them are sitting in this house. He told them in parliament. They took notes. They were writing furiously. He left. They did nothing. On the 6th of July, he saw this. He called a press conference. Not in his SAPS uniform, because he knew they were going to kill him. He came to show them, to say, I'm prepared to die for the truth. He came in camouflage uniform with his people, some of them wearing balaclavas, to say, if you take me head on, because I fear Fokol. And he told us the truth. What did the president do? Run again and say, no, there must be a Madlanga Commission. Now they've got two, the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee on what he told us in parliament and now on the 6th of July. Now, poor Mkhwanazi had to come to Madlanga Commission and say the story. We all had it as a country. No. Now they didn't have another appointment to go to the ad hoc committee to tell them the same things. And every single solitary one of the week is doing that. So all we are doing is kicking the can down the road. But not only did he tell us who the thieves are, he told us that the National Deputy Police Commissioner gets R1 million a month, every month, from Ket Vuzimuzi Matlala in a Woolworths bag. I mean, how specific can you get? How specific can you get? Instead of putting somebody in orange overalls, the president knows, oh no, it's local government elections this year, 2026, another 2 years, national, another commission. Remember, the Zondo Commission took 4 years. Some commissions in parliament have been extended for the 3rd time. So he knows that he will retire as a president. His intention is not to take a single action. And Rose, your last one is lift as you rise. How do you do it even when you yourself are struggling? Kasi Sotho bare bana ba motho ba arulelana hloho ya tsiye. Now a locust is already small. It's the size of my finger. It says siblings share, not the whole locust. All they have is just the head of the locust. English says, when you are blessed with something, whatever that something is, it is enough to share. That's the philosophy. That's where you start. It's enough to share. Maila Sotho are metlahula we libisa wahabo. Every animal, anywhere in nature, looks after its own, except black people. In fact, when every other nation has made it and they've got money coming out of their ears, what they do, they build homes that remind them of home. That's why you go to the Western Cape, we talk about Cape Dutch architecture. Because the people who arrived in 1652 with the dromedaries, Reger and Goedehoop, are trying to recreate the Netherlands. It must feel like home, except black people. When black people have money, no, they build Tuscany. They don't want rondavels with a straw roof. They grew up eating brown bread. They know it's healthy and it used to be cheaper than white bread because it reminds them of poverty. They don't even want to see it. They want toasted white bread. They don't go to Alexander and buy art of their own people so that when you walk through the door, you don't have to ask, does an African live here? But you can see by the architecture. If you don't, you see it by the art displayed on the wall. No, they buy enrich art. Not Matsimela Manaka, not Maishe Maponya, Barry Lois. So lift as you rise is an African adage. Behold the turtle is an African adage. Coming in from the cold is an African adage. Because I couldn't countenance the fact that I'm an African. I could have quoted William Shakespeare, because I've read William Shakespeare. Or Wordsworth, because I read Wordsworth. I even read Animal Farm. But when I walk through the door, the first thing you see is I'm black. The second you see is that I'm male. At least I think I'm male. So lift as you rise says nature is a wonderful metaphor for life. Nature is a wonderful metaphor for business. Lift as you rise says you don't have to wait until you have risen. It's a continuous tense. You don't have to wait until you have the title or the corner office. It says success is who we become in the process of succeeding, not once we have succeeded. It says there is no exercise much more powerful for the heart than extending a hand and lifting another human being, because that's what it means to be human. Even my Bible as a Catholic boy says those that are helping others are completing God's work. Lift as you rise says everything that nature does, it doesn't do for itself, but it does for others. Leadership is not self, but the other-centered. That's why rivers don't drink their own water, trees don't eat their own fruit. The sun doesn't shine because itself needs the vitamin D. Flowers don't give this wonderful fragrance because they themselves want to smell like Fontainebleau rather than Calcutta in summer when it's 45 degrees in the shade. Management, it's about the effectiveness and efficiencies in climbing the corporate ladder of success. Leadership, it's about being genuinely obsessed with the development of others, because you've been there, done that, you've got the t-shirt to show for it. Imagine, as I end, if you are the reason why somebody feels noticed, seen and heard, loved, respected and supported. Mepinki.
Uyaleboga ntate. Umuntu ngabantu. Siyabonga. Over to you, Nomvuyo.
What do I say except that we have been fed with truth. We lift as we rise. We have been inspired. Thank you so much, Mhlompe Mhlekazi Bonang Mohale. There's so much wisdom that we have taken from this session. We are truly blessed. Truly blessed. I don't even know what to say except we are blessed, and may God continue to bless you in all that you do. We really appreciate all the wisdom, all the knowledge, and all the encouragement. We are inspired. We feel encouraged. Thank you so much.